Daniel Harper did not wake up that morning expecting anything to change, yet something inside him already felt restless. Seattle moved at its usual pace outside his apartment, window cars passing. People walking with their heads down, lives crossing without touching. Daniel dressed, ate quickly, and left for work, but a quiet thought followed him like a shadow. Is this all there is? He was not unhappy, but he was not alive in the way he believed people were meant to be. Daniel worked at a small nonprofit that helped people find housing and basic support. He believed in the work. He answered calls patiently, solved problems without complaint, and stayed late when others left. People often thanked him, yet when the office lights turned off, he went home alone. His kindness seemed to end at the surface of things. No one asked how he felt. No one stayed. That morning, he stopped at his usual cafe before work. It was a narrow place with warm lights and quiet music, a pause in the city's noise. Daniel liked sitting by the window, watching people move by like scenes from unfinished stories. He thought of all the lives crossing each other without knowing, and he wondered if anyone ever noticed him doing the same. He stood in line, hands in his coat pockets, mind drifting. That was when the door opened and Emily Carter walked in. She entered slowly, as if unsure whether she truly belonged there. Rain dotted her coat, and she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear while looking at the menu. There was nothing dramatic about her appearance, yet something about her presence changed the room. She carried a quiet weight, the kind that came from loss rather than anger. Daniel noticed her hesitation, the way she stood slightly apart from others. He recognized that feeling. It was the same way he had felt when he first moved to the city. Years ago, hopeful but unsure, strong but tired. Emily ordered her coffee in a soft voice. When she gave her name, Daniel heard it clearly. Emily, simple, honest. The barista called it out moments later. And Emily stepped forward, smiled politely, and thanked him. Her smile faded quickly, replaced by a thoughtful expression that stayed with Daniel longer than he expected. He told himself it was nothing. People came and went every day. Yet when Emily chose the table near the window, close to where he stood, Daniel felt a quiet pull. Not attraction alone, but curiosity. He wondered what had brought her here, what she carried with her. They did not speak that day. They simply shared the same space, the same quiet moment before leaving in different directions. Still, Daniel carried the memory with him, like a note he had not yet read. Days passed. Life continued. Then Emily returned. She came at the same time, ordered the same drink, and sat in the same place. This time, Daniel was seated nearby. Their eyes met briefly, and she offered a small, uncertain smile. He returned it, surprised by how natural it felt. The next time, she commented on the rain. Daniel agreed. A simple exchange, but something about it felt warm. Their conversations grew slowly, never forced. They talked about the cafe, the city, the way Seattle weather seemed to reflect people's moods. Emily told him she had moved from Vancouver. She said she needed a change, though she did not explain why. Daniel did not push. He had learned that some stories opened only when they were ready. Over time, Emily shared more. She spoke of a long relationship that had ended quietly, without anger, but full of disappointment. She had believed in a future that slowly disappeared. When she talked, she stared into her cup, as if the answers might be hidden there. Daniel listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer advice. He had seen too many people rush to fix pain without understanding it. He knew sometimes the greatest help was simply staying. Emily noticed this. One morning, she told him, "You listened differently." Daniel did not know how to respond. He shrugged, unsure how to explain something he had never named. The truth was simple. He listened because he cared, and because he knew what it felt like to speak into silence. As weeks passed, Their conversations extended beyond the cafe. They walked together before work, sometimes sharing lunch, sometimes just sitting quietly by the water. Emily laughed more. Daniel felt lighter. Yet beneath the warmth, a question grew inside him. Why was he doing this? He told himself his intentions were clear. He wanted to help Emily find her footing in a new place. He wanted her to feel less alone. That was who he was, a helper, a listener, someone who believed people deserved to wake up to their own lives. But late at night, when he replayed their conversations, Daniel felt something deeper. A longing he had ignored for years stirred awake. He wanted to matter to someone, not because he was useful, but because he was seen. Emily, meanwhile, struggled with her own thoughts. She appreciated Daniel's presence, his steady calm, felt safe with him in a way she had not felt in a long time. Yet safety scared her. She had trusted once before and lost herself in the process. One evening, as they walked through a quiet street, Emily stopped suddenly. She looked at Daniel, her expression serious. "Do you ever feel like everyone is asleep?" she asked. Daniel understood instantly. "All the time," he said. She nodded, relieved. "I moved here hoping things would feel different. I wanted to wake up again. Some days I'm not sure I know how." Daniel felt the weight of her honesty. He wanted to promise her something he could not guarantee. Instead, he said, "Maybe waking up doesn't happen all at once." Emily smiled, but there was sadness behind it. Maybe. That night, Daniel walked home alone, the city lights blurring in the rain. He realized he stood at a quiet edge. His intentions to help others were no longer simple. They were mixed with desire, hope, and fear. He wondered if wanting connection made him selfish, if caring too deeply would cost him the peace he had built around himself. He had spent years being strong for others. He did not know if he could be strong for himself. Still, the next morning, he returned to the cafe. Emily was already there. When she saw him, her face brightened without effort. In that moment, Daniel understood something important. Helping people wake up also meant allowing himself to feel. And feelings, once awake, could not easily be put back to sleep. As they talked, laughed, and shared another quiet morning, Daniel sensed that this was only the beginning. Something gentle but powerful was forming between them, something neither of them fully understood. He did not know where it would lead. But for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt awake. Daniel Harper felt a new kind of tension in the days after he and Emily grew closer. Their bond had formed quietly, naturally, but Daniel sensed a shift in the air around them. Simple moments like sharing a bench at the park or walking along. The river now carried unspoken weight. Each smile, each glance seemed to hold something more, though neither dared to name it. Daniel told himself he was still only helping her, being a steady presence, but his heart whispered something different. Emily, for her part, noticed the way Daniel made her feel alive again. She had spent months hiding from the world, unsure if she could trust someone or even trust herself to hope again. Daniel's patience, his gentle humor, and his ability to truly listen had begun to melt that armor she wore. Still, she was cautious. She had been burned before, and the fear of opening her heart too soon lingered like a shadow. Yet every time she was with Daniel, even in silence, she felt a warmth she hadn't realized she missed so desperately. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves at the waterfront. The clouds hung low, turning the river a shade of gray that matched the sky. The city's hum felt distant here, replaced by the soft rhythm of falling rain and the occasional ripple in the water. Daniel carried 2 umbrellas, offering one to Emily as they stepped under the smaller one together. She accepted with a smile that didn't quite hide the weight in her eyes. "Do you ever feel like life moves too fast?" Emily asked quietly, her gaze fixed on the water. "All the time," Daniel said. "Sometimes I think people just walk through their days never noticing themselves." Emily nodded. I moved here to notice again, to find something real. But sometimes I wonder if I'm capable of it." Daniel stayed silent. He knew the words to offer could either soothe or shatter, and he did not want to risk pushing her. Instead, he simply reached for her hand. Not dramatically, not in a way that demanded attention, but gently, like a promise. Emily let her hand rest in his. The simple touch carried more meaning than any speech could have. As they walked together, Daniel thought about his own intentions. He had told himself he was only helping, only guiding. But each day with Emily chipped away at that certainty. He wanted more. He wanted her to see him, to care for him in the way he had cared for her. And a part of him was afraid that naming it would change everything, that expressing desire might push her away, or complicate the bond they were building. Emily, too, wrestled with feelings she did not yet understand. She trusted Daniel more than anyone she had in months, yet she feared the vulnerability that trust required. She feared hope. She feared heartbreak. And yet, holding his hand, listening to the quiet music of the rain around them, she felt something stir inside, something she hadn't felt in a long time. That evening, they sat on a park bench as the rain softened into a drizzle. Emily spoke about her past with an honesty she rarely allowed herself. She spoke of promises that were broken, love that had faded quietly, and the fear that she would never feel safe again. Daniel listened, as he always did, and offered nothing but his presence. There was no rush to fix, no advice to impose, only the steady reassurance of someone willing to remain. When she fell silent, Daniel finally spoke. "I've been where you are," he admitted. "Feeling like everything I care about will slip away. Feeling like hope is too dangerous to trust. I can't promise it won't hurt again, but I can promise you won't face it alone." Emily looked at him, the rain catching in her hair and the streetlights reflecting in her eyes. "You make it easier to believe in myself again," she said softly. Daniel felt a warmth spread through him. It was a different kind of fulfillment than helping strangers or solving problems. This was personal, intimate, and quietly terrifying. His feelings for Emily were no longer abstract or distant. They were real, immediate, and undeniable. He wanted to tell her, to confess the truth of his heart, but the words felt heavy, as if speaking them might shatter the delicate trust they had built. Days turned into weeks. Their routine grew, each meeting layered with deeper connection. They walked, talked, and laughed. They shared stories, memories, and small joys, and yet a quiet tension lingered. Both wanted something more, but were afraid to cross the line that might change everything. Daniel's heart longed for her, and Emily's soul began to awaken to the possibility of love again, but neither was ready to risk the fragile balance they had found. One evening, Emily invited Daniel to her apartment for dinner. It was a simple meal, nothing fancy, but she had made an effort, and Daniel noticed. He brought wine and a small bouquet of flowers, more for the gesture than for show. As they ate, they spoke about dreams and fears, sharing thoughts they had not voiced to anyone else. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by laughter, and quiet pauses that felt comfortable rather than awkward. After dinner, they moved to the small balcony. The city stretched before them, lights reflecting in the river below. Rain had cleared, leaving the air fresh and cool. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, shivering slightly, and Daniel draped his coat over her shoulders. The proximity felt natural, inevitable. "Why are you always there for everyone?" Emily asked suddenly, her voice trembling. Daniel hesitated. This was the question he had avoided answering for years. He had always told himself it was selfless, that helping others was just who he was. But in this moment, he saw the truth reflected in her eyes. "'Cause I don't want people to feel as alone as I once did," he said finally. Emily's hand found his again, and the touch lingered longer than before. The air between them shifted, charged with unspoken emotion. Daniel realized he had reached a point where staying silent was no longer an option. He wanted her to know the truth, to see his heart as fully as she had allowed him to see hers. Emily, for her part, felt the weight of the moment. She had spent so long protecting herself that vulnerability was almost foreign. But looking at Daniel, feeling his presence and his honesty, she felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps it was safe to trust again, to allow herself to feel fully without fear of immediate loss. The night deepened around them. The city's hum was distant now, replaced by the quiet intimacy of shared space. Rain had left the streets wet and shimmering, reflecting the lights and their unspoken emotions. Daniel's hand brushed against Emily's again, tentative but deliberate. She did not pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly closer, testing the uncharted territory between friendship and something more. They sat like that for a long time, neither speaking, both feeling the shift. Daniel realized that his intentions, once simple and clear, had grown complicated. He wanted to help her wake up to life, yes, but he also wanted to be part of that awakening, to share it, to matter to her in a way that went beyond friendship. Emily, too, felt a stirring she could not ignore. Her heart, long, cautious, and guarded, began to respond to the warmth and constancy of Daniel's care. She recognized that what she felt was not just comfort, it was attraction, longing, and the fragile excitement of trust renewed. As the night wore on, they eventually moved inside. The balcony remained their silent witness, the city lights casting a soft glow through the window. They continued to talk, the conversation now edged with intimacy and subtle revelations. Each story, each laugh, each shared glance built a bridge across the gap they had maintained for so long. At one point, Emily admitted her fear. "Afraid of hoping again?" she said quietly. Daniel squeezed her hand. "Hope is risky," he said. "But it's worth it if you find the right person to share it with." She looked at him, searching his eyes for reassurance. Daniel's gaze was steady, honest, and full of feeling. In that moment, they both understood that the risk was necessary. They could continue to guard themselves, or they could allow this connection to grow, fragile and uncertain as it was. And in the silence that followed, with the city below them and the night stretching endlessly around, Daniel realized he had made a choice. He would no longer hide his heart behind intentions of simple help. He wanted Emily not as a project, not as someone to guide, but as a person he could care for deeply, fully, and without reservation. Emily, sensing the shift in him, felt her own courage rise. She reached for him, not demanding, not rushing, but simply acknowledging the bond that had formed between them. The touch was soft but deliberate, a promise without words. Daniel felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and nervous anticipation. He had wanted to be needed, to be seen, and now he was. The quiet longing that had grown inside him finally had a shape, a form, a direction. The rain-slicked streets of Seattle glimmered below them, reflecting the new beginning they had found in each other. Both Daniel and Emily knew the road ahead would not be simple. There would be moments of doubt, of fear, of past wounds resurfacing. But for the first time in a long time, they felt awake together. And in that awakening, they discovered something neither had expected. The possibility of love, gentle yet real, fragile yet worth the risk. The night held them close, a quiet witness to the beginning of something neither fully understood, but both were willing to explore. They did not speak the words aloud yet, but their hearts knew. And in that knowing, they felt the promise of tomorrow, waiting patiently just beyond the rain. The city around them slept, unaware, while two hearts quietly chose to wake.